Hi, I'm Sister Simone Campbell. I'm the Executive Director of Network Lobby for Catholic Social Justice, and I have the honor of being the leader of Nuns on the Bus. Well, here we are virtually in Philadelphia, where some very innovative work is being done. And I'm very excited for this conversation. We're meeting with the Black and Brown Workers Cooperative and to hear about their organizing and some of the campaigns that they've taken on. Also, there's a housing dimension to this that I'm really eager to hear about. So, without further ado, let us be joined by our colleagues from the Black and Brown Workers Cooperative. Hi, I'm so glad to be with you. I know we have, hopefully Shani Akila will be able to join us, but let us get started first, maybe with just brief introductions. If you could each introduce yourself so we know who you are, how you're connected, and then we'll get into the conversation. So, Sterling, perhaps we could start with you. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that's great.
So could you introduce yourself and tell us your role at the cooperative?
Yeah, so I'm a organizer. I guess I don't want to give. I'm just a person in the city that has a few lived experiences around drug use and mental health. Been organizing with the Black and Brown Workers Cooperative and also ACT UP Philadelphia for this time. I've in general I've been focused on harm reduction, supporting like safe injection sites and syringe exchanges and syringe service programs, and do that at the kind of like supporting people on the street, supporting people in their homes, also just supporting like my small networks of people that I know that need assistance, and also part of this is I am also a housing lawyer, so I'm very aware of housing issues like evictions and the mass displacements that are happening in Philadelphia. So I have a lot of those backgrounds, and I've recently joined, I guess 2018, joined the Black and Brown Workers Cooperative, and I've just been trying to like really enhance the work that was already been done by Shani, Akila, and some of the people that are part of the fam, in terms of like Dominique London and Darren Wallace and Adwali Mohammed, who have been spearheading a land campaign through the Black and Brown Workers Cooperative for several years before then. So,
oh, great. Okay.
I just wanted to like give that context of this work.
Super. Thanks so much, Sterling. And you and I share a legal background. I didn't do landlord, tenant, or real estate. I did family law, but I appreciate that piece of analysis that comes with it. Thank you so much. Juanita, do you want to introduce yourself to our viewers out here?
I don't think that they can hear you.
Oh, what's going on?
Something is happening.
Oh, we're having trouble. Caroline, on the back end, can you unmute everybody, or did people mute themselves? Okay, Chris, we're gonna. Oh, I think we have one. Can you hear? We've got your audio. Okay, let's move to Chris. Can you hear, Chris? Yeah. All right.
Chris, can you hear?
Hey, I can't hear. I apologize.
You gave me a heart attack. I was thinking, oh my heavens, we lost them. We were having such a good conversation. Okay, Chris, can you introduce yourself? And I understand you're in training, so I'm curious as to how you got involved in this.
Yeah. So I'm just taking a little second to collect my breath and get grounded, and giving myself a moment while doing so. Yeah, so I'm Chris. I use they, them pronouns. I am a Philly born, based, raised human. I'm a Philly John. I say that I am such. And I've been in a lot of Philly programs since the age of 15. So for about the past 10 years, I don't really like to tell people my age, but anyway. So for the past 10 years, I've really been in Philly programs, Philly organizations. I've been one of the young folks helping to create a lot of different programs, sitting at different tables to talk about different student rights, needs, necessities, also being a teaching artist, and just doing a bunch of different things in Philly because I care about the city as my city, as a city that I'm dedicated to, as a city that is still helping to raise me and that I'm helping to raise as well, because, you know, we're all here helping one another. And so I came into BBWC maybe about 5 years ago when I really started to learn about the different or the Black tradition of organizing, and the necessity for it. Um, and so, yeah, I heard Shani Akila speak at a public event that I don't remember which event it was at this moment. However, I just remember the way in which how they were speaking made me feel and connected to me. And also a lot of the things that they were saying just made clear sense.
Oh, that's the best advertising. Clear sense. Wow.
And
I'm glad
so,
you
yeah,
go
for the
ahead.
past 5 years, I've kind of just been learning the different skills of organizing or just connecting with community, my own self, and what my needs and resources are. And found myself in a meeting of the minds or in a conversation to discuss if me being a part of the cooperative was a move. And it was the move. It is the move.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad you're with us. I look forward to this conversation. Uh, let's see if Juan, can you hear us now? Can you unmute?
Yes, I can hear you, Sister Swan. I apologize for that.
Oh, I'm just glad we made it work. That's all I care
Yes,
about. Great.
yes.
And so the question is just kind of a brief introduction. How did you get involved with BBWC, and what is it that you're caring about in your work at this point?
Okay, yes, and thank you to my comrades who've shared before, and it's great to see Shani on the line with us. So this feels like a trajectory in many ways, different trajectories coming together, different alignments, different core organizing beliefs that have moved across different experiences, and just finding alignments here in Philadelphia, and being able to learn and grow and process and have accountability together over the past several years. Myself also finding myself in this space in 2018 with Shani and Abdul Ali and Dominique and other folks. And the first time that I met Shani Akila was at an anti-oppression training for ACT UP members. Sterling and myself have been involved with ACT UP Philadelphia, their focus on housing and harm reduction and safe consumption sites. ACT UP Philadelphia with the legacy of prevention point and syringe access coming in 1996, being a continued legacy for years, really learning on the shoulders of elders in this city, passing on the legacy, passing on the work, passing on that accountability, and learning how to follow through on that work and that legacy has been an important part. So I moved here in 2014 for medical school. I moved here in a process of starting medical school in an experience of evolving activism around anti-war activism, being in the military from 2003 to 2007, deploying to Iraq, watching an anti-war movement of veterans and allies evolve from 2004, evolve from the legacy of the 60s and 70s with the civil rights movement, and still seeing a movement get caught up in the same issues of accountability, the same issues of white supremacy, the same issues of homophobia, the same issues of toxic masculinity. Even as we try to learn those processes, it still happens. And so for me to move through that over those years, move into medical school, witness white supremacy and toxic masculinity in our medical institutions at the University of Pennsylvania, at Jefferson here in Philadelphia, just it being the mainstream culture, and seeing how organizations like ACT UP are discarded in movements for health as liberation and movements for collective liberation, really learning to see who the leaders are, who who need to be uplifted, whose work is discarded, whose work is overrun. And it really made it quite clear my role here in putting forward accountability, uplifting accountability around issues of anti-Blackness, issues of white supremacy, issues of colonialism, issues of toxic masculinity. So that's where I feel the role as a facilitator, as someone here to uplift accountability in that way, in the encampments, uplifting that leadership and that work, and really highlighting the ways in which it continues to be erased in even the most progressive spaces.
Wow, thank you for that challenging and insightful place we are in our nation at this moment. Well, for a long time. If I said moment, it would indicate just at one point, but this has been a long history, and I'm really grateful for your engaging it. Okay, Shani, I am so glad you've made it to join us, and hopefully you can unmute and we're all okay technologically. But I'm really eager to hear the beginnings and what is the Black and Brown Workers Cooperative at this point. You clearly are a magnet for drawing people in to a project for justice, to engagement for justice. And I'm eager to hear your story.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here with my comrades who have spoken so powerfully already. So I'm always honored to be in their presence. 2016. 2016 is where it all began, I would say. I was a whistleblower at an AIDS service organization at the time. And I blew a whistle with considerable amount of privilege. I was a manager there. They were excited to hire me. I was fresh out of grad school. And I think they figured this is someone that would come and just sort of follow the program. But very quickly I realized that my own community, Black and brown, queer and trans folks who are disabled, folks living with HIV, who were doing the most laborious work for these organizations, had the least amount of voice and agency. And I noticed patterns of paternalism, which, what we talk about in our cooperative a lot is a plantation politic, and understanding that when we see majority white power structures, with Black and brown folks and other marginalized people towards the bottom, we understand that this is in fact a continuation of colonial practice in contemporary society. At that time, I'd seen these same patterns in the domestic violence movement. And as an advocate in the anti-violence movement, there was a very powerful organization called the Women of Color Network. And I want to uplift them because I stand on their shoulders, and much of the BVWC's practice, both pedagogically and in our organizing approaches, really have been birthed from a lot of Black feminists who have come before us. So I would be remiss not to say their name. But in the anti-violence movement, I was an advocate that was asked to tell my story along with hundreds of other people about the, I'm sorry, my toddler is asking for attention, about the same sort of abusive practices and power differentials and hierarchies within the domestic violence movement. And they actually deemed Black and brown advocates endangered in that movement because of the ways in which we were fast getting pushed out of agencies when we rose questions of racism And when we talked directly and spoke truth to power about other oppressive systems happening, whether it was along lines of disability, sexuality, gender identity. And so I actually technically was a whistleblower before I even became one at Philadelphia Fight. I had organized in the anti-violence movement as well. And so I largely came into the aid service organization sector with that lens. And when I saw that this was also happening there, I had a crisis of consciousness and knew that if in fact my community had a foot on their necks, nothing I was receiving was going to work. It didn't matter how good the benefits or how high the salary. And so I started to talk to other workers. We started to talk to each other. We started to share our stories. We started to realize there were a lot of similarities in what it is folks were experiencing. And yeah, basically I got fired because they saw me as a troublemaker. And to be clear, any one of us that decide to stand on the side of like righteous justice, any one of us that understand very clearly that this system is built off of the backs of marginalized people and decide to challenge that, we are deemed troublemakers, and the system should be afraid of us. And I think that our cooperative has been very clear that when folks who are, occupy marginalized statuses come together and become unafraid of these systems that tell us that we are weak, become unafraid of these systems that tell us that we do not have the power to change things, do not have the power to demand that we walk in our full humanity, anything is possible. And so I think that in 2017, I came across Abdul Ali Muhammad and Dominique London. I want to say their names and raise them up. They are the other two co-founders of the Black and Brown Workers Cooperative. I approached them.
Say it again. Say their names again so I catch it.
Yes, Abdul Ali Muhammad and Dominique London are the other two co-founders. And so I had approached them with this vision, and Abdul Ali at that time was working at Mazzoni Center, and would later lead a very powerful campaign against the power structure at Mazzoni Center. And I can talk about that a bit more if I need to later. But at that time, it was ripe for Abdul Ali Muhammad and myself to come into community with each other. And so together, and Abdul Ali Muhammad is fearless, as is Dominique London. And so between the three of us, we decided to formalize the Black and Brown Workers Cooperative as a structure. And I would say since then, there's been a lot of successful campaigns. We know that true change happens over the course of time, but the big wins we have to lift up. And so I want to lift up Abdul Ali Muhammad's name in the Mazzoni Center campaign as they engaged in a med strike. Abdul Ali Muhammad is out and open as a pause organizer and writer and thinker. Abdul Ali Muhammad is very much a historian as well. Abdul Ali Muhammad basically said, I will not take my medication until Dr. Nguyen and Nurit Shine are ousted from the power structures of Mazzoni Center. Now, why was that important? That was important because Dr. Nguyen had been accused of quid pro quo policies within the Mazzoni Center. As a doctor, he was telling patients, sure, you can get this medication if you do this particular sexual act for me. Patients were coming forward, community members were coming forward, and because of those testimonies of sexual assault and abuse and harassment, that staff was very galvanized. And so what started out as like 70 workers walking out turned into 90 workers walking out, turned into the ousting of Dr. Nguyen, turned into the stepping down and ousting of Nurit Shine, turned into other board members following suit. And so this was very important because it was a demonstration, right? It was a demonstration of the power that we hold as Black and Brown marginalized people, as queer and trans folks of all races, ethnicities, backgrounds. So I want to lift up Ali Muhammad.
Okay, Shani, I just want to make sure that I understand. So the doctor was requiring, was a sexual predator in the process of getting drugs, or prescribing drugs to patients.
Yes.
And the institution had either ignored it or protected him.
That's right.
Well,
Yes.
can I just loop this in for people that have been watching this morning? We did a site visit down in Florida with the Immokalee workers, and they were talking about sexual exploitation down there for the farm workers, the women in the fields, in order to be able to work or to, be paid. I think what you're pointing out is and what I hear the connection is that it's race and it is sexual exploitation that creates this dominant narrative in some places that needs to be broken. And congratulations on a campaign to break this open and to make change happen. It's disturbing to hear that it was, but I'm so grateful for your engagement and Muhammad Ali's engagement.
Yes, thank you for that. And I want to definitely say we've done a lot of collaboration work with the Imolake farm workers, and they do very powerful work. So thank you for lifting them up. Yeah, I mean the sexual abuse and the sexual exploitation of Black and brown bodies is something that continues to occur, right, from slavery to now. And we are clear that this is a product of colonialism. We are clear that this is a product of white supremacy, that marginalized bodies are deemed as property, and this in fact is not something of the past. And so I think that when this is the mindset, folks that are largely vulnerable, right? And so folks living with HIV, folks who are trans, and racially marginalized, right? Who need to go to Mazzoni Center to get medications or to get hormones, right? I mean, for those of us as queer and trans people, it's really hard for us to get resources that we need. And so largely we are dependent sometimes on organizations that are exploitive. Wow. And such was the case with Mazzoni, with the power structure there. But I do want to say, not only did we successfully oust in collaboration and with those Mazzoni workers who led that walkout, Mazzoni workers had to make the choice, and they made the choice to stand with the community. It was powerful to watch. I was pregnant and sick in my bed watching that walkout. And I remember just crying and saying, this is why we do this work. It was powerful. It was powerful. So shout out to the Mazzoni workers. The Mazzoni workers also decided to unionize, and we definitely supported them in that effort. So sometimes we act as a middle people between workers and like unions. So that came out of their work.
Wow. Okay, so my cheat sheet that I have over here on the side that Sister Emily got me is that I understand that you've done an anti-displacement campaign, your labor organizing that you're speaking about, community engagement, and consciousness raising, anti-oppression training. Are those the four areas that you all work in principally at this point?
Yes, I mean, we are two wheelhouses under the same umbrella. So one of our wheelhouses is our organizing on the groundwork, and that is something that is being led by Sterling Johnson and Juan Spinato. They are the two organizers on the ground leading that now. And then the other wheelhouse are those of us doing the pedagogical work, the training work that you just described, which is the anti-oppression work that we have now started to call liberatory practice work. And so within that wheelhouse, we build curriculum rooted in liberatory pedagogy. We have over 30 curriculum, and we get contracted with organizations, groups, collective spaces throughout the city of Philadelphia and beyond Pennsylvania, really, to help people understand what we mean when we're talking about systems of oppression, help them to understand what we mean when we talk about power, when we talk about privilege, when we talk about positionality. Right? Help people to understand what we mean when we talk about leveraging privilege in service of those who are oppressed, right? Leveraging that in service of a liberatory vision and future. And so we understand that we stand on the shoulders of many scholars that come before us, and we honor them constantly in our work. But yeah, those are the two wheelhouses. You are muted.
You are muted.
I don't know what happened. It was a magic. It was magic. We got talking about hot topics, so I got muted. That was the problem. So the key is to acknowledge whose shoulders we stand on, and then how we keep moving forward to make, well, I don't know if it's forward, but trying to expand the awareness and shift, make change, actually make change. And it appears to me that this is a moment where we can maybe have one of those inflection points. Because I was thinking about Isabel Wilkerson's book Cast, which I'm just finishing reading. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it, but for me, it was such a crystal clear presentation how it's more than skin color, it's that colonial base and the economic hierarchies that have been created in our country, that to shift them is a power shift. And that's where I was struck by her analysis. But maybe we could hear from Sterling a bit about your work, and then hear Chris how you're connected, and then come back and hear about the anti-oppression work. Does that make the most sense?
I think it, from the order that you suggested, I think it might make sense, or it does make sense for Sterling. I want to defer to Sterling and want to uplift their work in the on the ground organizing.
Please. Okay. Sterling, one, let's
I'm in the other house.
Your work out, so because we're only going to have a half hour left, and there's so much to cover. So I'm just wanting to really make sure we honor your work.
I am comfortable with the order Sterling and Chris. I think that because then it would get both the on the ground community work and also the kind of the liberatory work happening. So I'm very comfortable with that.
Okay. I can just, I'm sure you have questions, and I don't want to speak just at length. So in general, the space that that I've been occupying has been really direct organizing with people that are unhoused, people that use drugs, people with mental health conditions. That's through Act Up Philadelphia. That's through working in collaboration with a few other organizations in the city, doing direct outreach. So kind of, the work has been going on for years, especially with Dominique London and specifically and around and Abdul Ali around the councilmanic privilege, specifically prerogative. Councilmanic prerogative, I think that's what it's called in Philadelphia. It's one of those, but about abolishing that and having a different system where we put like racial equity as the thing that we care about more when we're talking about land policy. So, or I don't know, but like from there, I will say, like, from the actual organizing on the ground that is occurring, I would start with January 2020 around supporting people that were being basically terrorized in the center city of Philadelphia. Center city of Philadelphia is like many central districts that are being targeted by large retailers to be a place where they will make money. And convention centers, tourism bureaus. They're targeting like center of the city as a place that will make money. And part of that is controlling unhoused populations around it. So they already get a huge subsidy, $50 million a year for coming to the city. In exchange for that, to make themselves look good, they put, I guess, one organization put $500,000 into a fund that would support permanent housing, right? So that shows you it's all worth it, right? It's like $500,000 is nothing. So, but the whole focus on it was to then focus on the people that were in the center of the city and remove them. So they went to places like under the tunnels of the convention center that people have been, living in, and kind of working with the people in the city for years to kind of leave early, and only come like after 9 or 10 to stay there. those people were removed, and they put like a police officer there for the duration of the time, right? Of forever, for 24 hours a day, 365. There's a police vehicle there sitting there, which really crystallizes to us this relationship between the police and private property, and also business interests. The police are only there to make sure that unhoused people are not at what we call, by the Parkway, which is Vine and 18th Street, and then under the convention center, which is a place where they want to make money. So there are probably basically three parts of our strategy, which is to interfere with these homeless sweeps, the unhoused sweeps, the forced removals of individuals that are in public space, to interfere with them, show them, video them, yell at the outreach workers, yell at the police that they should stop, in a direct way. Also organizing with unhoused people that then have been in contact with our comrades about when that's happening, right? So I was just thinking to myself, of course, that's happening in Kensington right now. So we really need to be be interfering tomorrow with people as well. Kensington is our main place in the city where there is a lot of open air drug use, but of course they're arresting people there right now, which is unfortunate. This is a constant thing that we are dealing with in Philadelphia. So number two, part of this would be a housing occupation that would take city-owned properties and what we call the housing authority in the Philadelphia Housing Authority. Many metropolitan cities,
Right.
counties have housing authorities. They, in Philadelphia, happen to have a lot of vacant properties. And the strategy would be to help individuals occupy those properties. This is a strategy that has been used, hasn't been used probably in 30 years in Philadelphia, but that we know that has been used and has been successful. And then thirdly, with again, in kind of collaboration with individuals and us being kind of the theoretical and kind of institutional base around the practice of it, would be the occupation of space in an encampment that was not authorized, where it is specifically situated between City Hall and the Philadelphia Museum of Art, which is a kind of known
Iconic
institution.
building. Yes.
Yes, and then in front of a space, again, deliberately placed in front of several condos that cost about $5,000 a month for a person to be, to live within them. So, and it was on this field called Von Kohn Field that is named after a police officer that was that got into an altercation with a Black Panther member, and so they've named this field for him. But we again wanted to honor that Black Panther member more than the police officer. So I as part of this group, it was important to do those three and continue to do those three strategies continually, having our demand, number one, primary demand is to have the city and the housing authority to transfer properties to us. We would hold them in a community land trust. I think deciding like where that is and what that looks like is getting into the details of that is very, very different, because we also are talking about a model that does not involve profit. This is not that does not include individual ownership. So there's a lot of education that has to be put towards that. So that was the model. We have been occupying that space. It started with about 5 tents. It went to 50. It went to 100. It went to 150. Went to 200. Within a few weeks, 3 weeks, it was a lot. There was probably among about 3 weeks, that's a few people decided that they wanted to move and they wanted to move to a space that was inside of the outside of the housing authority itself. The people moved. The city, I think, they know who we are, and we've been doing this work for a long time. So they came to us and wanted to begin negotiations. Some of the work that's been done has just been around like really creating this narrative, and explaining this narrative to individuals about like what this encampment is. It is a space where people, where there's not a nobody is in charge. It is happening in a natural, organic fashion where people are living together, working with each other. There are small amounts of street medics and also people in a kitchen that are providing support to the ways that the residents are actually working with each other. We call it a no cop zone. No outreach people or nonprofit people are welcome. They're available for others to go and see them outside of the space, but in general, we understand the connection between surveillance of not only the police, but also the nonprofit industrial complex. Things that we, policies that we are very clear on is the fact that no children are staying at the space, because we understand that Department of Human Services, a lot of places call the Child Protective Services, they come, they will find you if you don't have a house, and they will take your children away. In terms of child separation, the city of Philadelphia does that more than other jurisdictions as well. So we, upon collecting money and donations, we make sure that they're in space, that we are getting hotel space, and also working with some of our other partners to make sure that those families are safe, especially Black women with children are just a priority when it comes to not only to making sure they are in hotels, but also getting into some of the houses that we occupy. Go ahead.
Can I just, so what I'm hearing is that part of this campaign is acknowledging that housing is a human right, and you're working together to support the community, which I hear as critical, that the community claims that right and then finds a way to create housing, or to get the city to give at least some housing so that people can exercise that right. Am I getting it, or did I miss it?
Yeah, so there's always the dual purposes of occupying space in exactly the ways that we need to, but also it's in because we're doing this in collaboration with people that are unhoused, that are actually unhoused. So it is not in directing people to how they want to live, but it is into supporting whatever initiatives they want. We do have some principles, of course we want to defund the police. Of course we would like to. We won't be accepting nonprofits as a legitimate in this space, in a real way. So there's some principles like that, but to fast forward in terms of what we've done now, has been to take on anything that comes our way. There have been threats of eviction. There have been 3 evictions that we have been provided and then survived through. We got a 3rd and final notice, and they did not come because there was a mobilization of the community, the community in Philadelphia, to come and defend the camp. So now we are talking to them about how they're going to transfer 50 houses of their vacant properties into our possession, where we will make a community land trust or a cooperative ownership model that really is based in our values.
Wow, that's great.
That is what we've done. And I think one of the things that people have always asked us is well, why don't you fundraise for the program? And it's no, that's not the whole point. We don't want to. They should just be disposing those properties to us. The kind of the programs that they are talking about. I know the system well, but I know that HUD basically allows a housing authority to take properties that are in neighborhoods like North Philadelphia, and they can take subsidies from those properties, and they can put them into other projects, and they will sell the vacant properties to private developers. Those private developers also that is the start of gentrification. That is what also drives the market for other private developers to then change the nature of places, and that's what happens here. There are places that are already gone. Point Breeze is already gone. I'm just saying places in Philadelphia, that's in South Philadelphia. Francisville and Brewery Town are places that, as soon as you get mentioned in one of these large scale magazines,
Right.
Yes, of course, your neighborhood is
Your
gone.
family.
The neighborhood that you thought you were a stranger in your neighborhood. Now people that were born and bred in North Philadelphia don't know the place that they've come to know. So that is what we're trying to stop. It's a direct intervention against the displacement of black and brown like homeowners, renters, everybody, and changing the black culture of these neighborhoods, Weston and North Philadelphia, where most of these housing authority properties actually exist. So
cool.
That's what it is.
I can see your passion. That is abundantly clear. So I am grateful for that. Shani, I sort of want to give Chris a chance to talk about what she's learning because I know she's in training. But then can we come to you and Juan and talk about this theory? I'm so intrigued by the theoretical framework that you're talking about and being I was thinking in my head, it's sort of the think tank for this direct action. So, but Chris, can you talk a little bit about what you're learning and what skills you've developed in the training program? It's putting you on the spot. I hope you don't mind.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I was just, there's been a lot of processing the past couple of months. I've been with BBWC for about 2 months now. And so, yeah, just uplifting they, them pronouns in a very loving way. Okay. And so, yeah, I've been training with BBWC for about the past 2 months. And it's been honestly, it's been a lot of things. I feel like throughout my entire time of trying to understand how colonization has impacted my life, my ways of like loving, existing, being, working, having nutrition for my body, just desires, shame, all of the different things that I experience in my existence, and figuring out how colonization has impacted those things. I haven't had enough time to get familiar with history that has been erased or stolen or taken from myself and many different others. And so without like traditions or traditions that should have been passed down, to have other ways to explain things outside of westernized ways, or just like language from indigenous tribes specifically, to talk more about my way of being. And for example, being something that I'm trying to learn more about is two-spiritedness within gender and energies, and how not talking about two-spiritedness, or actually not even not to not say not talking about two-spiritedness, or just talking about my existence separate from colonization, or having the need to combat colonization in order for me to exist, which I feel like goes to us using liberatory practice. We're giving liberatory practices and helping folks with liberatory practices, and moving from talking about anti-oppression trainings, because it gives us more space to recognize that through learning all of these things, or through exploring all of these things and thinking about ourselves in a whole kind of way, our holistic care, all of the resources that we know that the earth provides to us, or that the globe provides to us. However, we don't know about the resources that the earth has to give to us that are being kept from us. And so being able to understand myself in a holistic kind of way, or thinking about it in that way, does help to unpack a lot of things, and being able to like create curriculum, or think about curriculum in an intentional way, and creating environments for folks to be able to unpack these other things as well. The same things that I'm unpacking, that folks also are unpacking. And just addressing colonialism in this very tangible way, that is acknowledging the step-by-step history, as well as the context that it created for us to be living in these current conditions, with the pandemic, with housing crisis, with living in not necessarily food deserts, but living in places that don't have all of the resources that we need.
Right.
And not just survive, thrive, and grow and transform, which is the key point. or the key purpose.
Well, I hear the world opening up in an analysis and possibility for you. That's an exciting moment and challenging, very challenging, I'm sure. Shania and Juan, can you talk about this very conscious, I don't know how to think tank work, the structural, intellectual basis for this work, and then how you work to educate other groups to open up to this deeper reality? I'm curious both on content, but also your strategies for making this move. It seems so critical.
I would be brief because I really want Juan to, I'm interested in Juan's thoughts on this. I will say that the thinkers and writers that came before us, whose shoulders we stand on, one of them is Fanon, Frantz Fanon. And we know that Fanon is a Black liberationist, theorist, out of Martinique. Frantz Fanon wrote a lot about the impacts of colonialism on the colonized person, both the psychological impacts as well as the social implications that are then birthed from the ways we are impacted psychologically, physically, spiritually, all of the things. Fanon also wrote about the power in gaining the resources that we need, as we are able in the spaces we live in to use in service of oppressed, marginalized folks, and what that means in leading our own struggles, leading our own liberation movements. And so, that is a very obvious name that we have to lift because Fanon is really has paved the way for a lot of this pedagogy. As has Paulo Freire, right? We talk a lot about Paulo Freire, right? Brazilian liberationist, who also wrote about the ways in which, right, dual consciousness happens for each of us, and that we are constantly moving in and out of spaces where we are either marginalized and or privileged and or both at the same time, that these things are not dichotomies, right? And so in understanding that as a process and understanding that each of us have a stake in this, right? Because Freire also talked about the fact that those that are doing who are the oppressor become less human in doing the act of oppressing, right? And so that is something that we are very clear about through our pedagogy, that no, in fact, everybody has a stake in removing and completely dismantling white supremacy so that we can build a liberatory vision and world. And so, I mean, for us, that has always been present since the inception of our cooperative, because we understand that the on-the-ground work that occurs affects our pedagogy, impacts and influences the ways in which we talk about liberation. In this instance, when I'm thinking about the land work that our comrades are doing on the ground, when we teach and we have these conversations, we lift up the organizing work that our comrades are doing, right, in community with others, so that we can use real case studies, real life understanding. But this is what we mean when we say using privilege in service of the oppressed, right? I mean, both Juan and Sterling have in big ways shifted their lives to do this on the ground work. And I would argue, and my comrades, I'm always open to being corrected if I am wrong, but my comrades made a choice at some point. There was a crisis of consciousness, and then there was a choice made. Well, all of us have that ability in society, right? And I don't think people realize that. There's so many, right? Sometimes it takes an intentional space created and someone saying, no, this is actually a crisis of consciousness. And if you are feeling uncomfortable, that's good, because that means there is something to be done here. Right? Not to shy away from it, not to run away from it. The point is to move towards the discomfort, right? But we are socialized to not talk about race. We're socialized not to talk about these things. And what happens when we don't talk about it? We cannot change it. Absolutely. How can we talk about something that supposedly does not exist? Right.
And it's all too evident that it exists. These are critical issues. And I think that piece about walking towards the discomfort is so critically important. As a white woman, I mean, I know that is critically important for my own change as well as for the societal change, but there's so few supports for that moving into the discomfort. It is so countercultural. And I think that I'm so impressed with this work that you're doing to shift that. It seems really critical. Juan, I wonder if you could speak a little bit about some of that shift work and how do you experience it? How do you support it?
Absolutely. That is feels like a really critical segue, moving into the discomfort, and absolutely uplifts everything that my comrades have said. I identify as a brown accomplice in this space. I feel that I started to learn that process in ACT UP. The different intersections at which it is necessary to learn how to step back but be present, to leverage privilege, to learn how to do that dispassionately, understanding how fragile ego in the, I have unloaded, unpacked, decolonized a level of toxic masculinity in my life. It's still ongoing work. I was in the Marine Corps. So that was real and continues to be real ongoing work to understand how my mind and body was able to move through this country and different institutions in this country with that level of privilege. What made that work easier, not easier, what made that work more accessible, but not any less painful or difficult, was being adopted by white supremacist parents in the 80s as our country moved through mass incarceration under the era of Reagan, in which case a whole generation of parents and families and community members were led into fear and hysteria around mass incarceration and drug use, inner city drug use, crime. And to be able in the last 10 years to unpack that childhood, to unpack the fears of working class families, to unpack how governments and fearmongers, warmongers, anti-Black, white supremacists in power, how they continue to hold on to power in Democratic and Republican parties at local, state, and government federal levels, how they trickle down into family institutions, how they trickle down into community institutions, how we as family members and community members adopt those practices of interpersonal emotional dynamics. It's not uncommon for us to walk in the streets here in Philadelphia and for it to still be a common familial practice to say, I disown my family member for substance use. We alienate, stigmatize, criminalize our own family members, our own community members, and at a systematic level, when it comes to anti-Blackness, it is bred at every level of the institutions. Wow. In a place like Philadelphia, in the hospitals, in the medical student-run clinics, the nursing student-run clinics, the outpatient clinics, the mental health facilities, the prisons, everywhere. And so where we run into this in the encampment work is this same default culture that brings along all of those embedded individual and interpersonal dynamics that have not been decolonized, that there is not systemic work to encourage people to do that work or to know what that work even looks like. Instead, we have a president who denounced that work as evil and anti-American. And this is a Republican president. I've had residents at a hospital at Jefferson University say that anti-oppression training felt like brainwashing. So there is not a far removed line between how, people want to remove themselves from Trump, but Trump as a toxic masculine individual who is about white supremacy, who's about American exceptionalism, American militarism, and anti-Blackness, his persona, his attributes live in many of the ways in which systems and institutions operate, especially in a city like Philadelphia. And so the pedagogical approach in a space like the encampment has to include real structures of anti-oppression training, of de-escalation training, of countering white supremacy and colonialism as it continues to show up. And we will say we have witnessed the violent backlash of those attempts. Even in the most progressive spaces, there is intense backlash because there is no real accepted and commitment to that work, and we face that every day.
Oh man, I hear you. I hear you in that one. Thank you, Sterling. I understand you want to get in there with some comment about research that needs to be done, and then we're going to have to wrap. This has been such a fast hour.
Yeah, I just wanted to say really quickly. I often, somebody brought up a question about like what's the difference between colonium and then the caste system and things of that sort. And I as an academic, I just reject like having these conversations where we're sitting in rooms talking about these things. No, there is enough housing in this world for people to live in, right? Nobody should be unhoused, right? There is enough research. There's enough to eat. There doesn't need to be any research on any of these subjects. Do not tell us about what efficiency means. Or like nobody need spend money on people. People deserve to be treated. Right now, we know that issues like that is because when a Black person says that they are dying, they are not believed. When they say they're hungry or they're unhoused, if they need a house or they need their family around them, they're not believed. But the only thing you need to do is to believe Black people. That is what you need to do. Period. And then use the research that you have and then give them to them. Do not talk to us about research. The amount of research that needs to be done is very, very simple. It is to listen. That is your research. I just want to be clear with people. I will not be doing any more research on we will be doing imaginative research on what is the vision of the world that we want to live in. So that is where the research should be done.
And I totally hear you on that, because I could see nothing more frustrating than having some academics say, oh, let's study this some more, because you all know we are our own witnesses for this. And I hear your work in the encampments. I hear your work in the thing that's so strong for me is how it builds community with the people who are impacted, as well as with everybody else if it's working well. And to trust, to walk towards the discomfort for those of us that are not directly affected, walk towards the discomfort, but engage in the real conversation. I mean, that's what I'm learning from you all, is what you're doing, which seems to be the simple, direct approach that could perhaps dismantle some of the whole issues around the colonial heritage that we have. Break it open. Let's move on. But it is obvious in our nation right now, as Juan was saying, with this current president, that he's supported by enough people who hold tight to it. So we have some work to do. Well, okay, with that, I have to thank you. We got to end. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your innovation. Thank you for your clear articulation of breaking this open in new ways, so that people are believed, that their needs are, that they can engage to meet their needs. And the leadership of the cooperative seems to me such a shared piece. I'm really touched by how you honor each other's leadership. I think that's something that I will carry away with me, especially, and to say thank you for your work for Philadelphia, but for being a witness for us as we do our little nuns on the bus, trying to spread the word about how new things can happen if we walk towards the discomfort and not avoid it. So thank you all. And good luck to you, Chris, as you continue this journey.
Hey,
the next
Chris.
generation. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Bye, y'all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.